And welcome back. So, the Beastie Boys run is finally over. This is a special and also the final episode for our Beast Slayers run, where I will recap the run and speak a little about the challenges the Beastie Boys faced. In this video I will briefly go through the run as a whole, the challenge, the team and the limitations, the goals, and finally, final words and the future. Number 1. The run as a whole. The run did take a long time to complete, as grinding for the requirements for some of the legendary beasts added by the Legends mod took quite a bit of doing. I think that for some of the legendary beast contracts the required amount of kills was way too many, but the favored enemy perks are being changed at some point, so in the future I would imagine that doing something similar will not take so much effort. I also think the legendary beast contracts need some balancing, but more on that later. We did nearly everything in the game, including the legendary locations, and I think that the only major thing we did not do is destroying the Goblin City. But I'll just try to remember to make that a goal for the next run. The run took long also because we were doing pretty poorly overall for the first 100 days or so, which delayed the power curve quite a bit. But in our struggles, the Beastie Boys were able to prove that you can climb yourself out of such a hole in Legends. If nothing else works, just keep doing deliveries, caravans and other easy contracts, and eventually you will get strong enough to tackle tougher challenges. After the company started to gain strength again, we did continue to periodically lose people, which was mostly due to sloppy play, but also a little bit to bad luck. But that's just how it goes, and it kept the run from getting boring until about 80% of the way through. Ultimately, the company ended up as absolute gods of the battlefield who could win basically any fight without breaking a sweat, at least with a little bit of preparation. But it did take a lot of time and grinding, something which I don't think I'd like to do again, so possible future runs will be shorter in duration, at least if the late game balance in Legends remains unchanged by then. As the challenges started to run out, so did my personal enjoyment of playing the game, which might be evident from the later episodes in the series. Normally I would have started a new run way earlier, but I wanted to complete all the available legendary beast contracts. In the end I was skipping the easy fights, meaning nearly all of them, which felt a little bad, but as it was not as time consuming or boring as actually doing the fights, I think it was the right call, both for my sanity and also for respecting anyone's time who actually watched all of this. Number 2. The challenge. Now let's talk a little bit about the challenge that my self-imposed limitations and our starting scenario provided. 2.1. Requiring combat recruits have the hate for beasts trait. This limitation limited the recruiting pool severely and ultimately made the early game more difficult, while the mid to late game was mostly just prolonged. So I'm not sure I liked this in hindsight or not. 2.2. No Vala. I liked skipping her as it removes the grindiness of making runes and also keeps the game more challenging for a while. We could still acquire runes from beasts or black markets, and in the end had quite a few. 2.3. A maximum of 14 mercenaries in combat. I liked this limitation a lot, and it did make the game more difficult as well. We had to make some choices with whom to bring to the fights, so I will probably be doing this in the future. 2.4. Beast Slayers and bad prices. So this malus really only hurts for the early and the mid game. By late game you will have more money than you know what to do with, so ultimately no big deal. 2.5. Mostly not safe scumming. So we safe-scummed once to avoid an event ambush in the forest where we would have just died. Luckily, the company did not suffer a major wipe in the mid to late game, though it did come pretty close. And of course I will continue with this method of playing the game. Overall, I enjoyed the game more because of these added challenges, and I might do something similar in the future. Finally, I will once again state the obvious. The run did get way too easy towards the end, but that does seem to happen eventually every time in Battle Brothers anyway. I hope that Legends adds some more late game challenge in the future. Number 3. The team and the limitations. I think the team has earned a bit of recognition, so let's go through them. So first up we have Pierre, who's been with the company for nearly 200 days and took part in 14 battles, has only 7 kills, but he is a tank and he was only used in a few battles, so that makes sense. So he's based around melee defense, resolve and initiative, well as hit points. Uses shields, has resilient, gets perfect fit for added initiative and also some fatigue cost reduction. Has even more fatigue cost reduction from mind over body, and coupled with rebound is able to keep Indomitable up indefinitely. However, he does not have back to basics, so in theory he could be broken, his resolve that is. So he's nearly indestructible, but not quite. He does also heal from the helmet of the Ijirok, coupled with freedom of movement. That does add significantly to his life expectancy. Then we have Borghild, who is one of my favorite mercenaries and one of my best damage dealers, with the company for nearly 500 days, took part in 280 battles and has over 500 kills. Uses this barbarian axe, well, used it for the majority of the run. Also had this reach axe for backup. Did not get quick hands, sadly, but even so was quite deadly. Used Berserk coupled with Battle Flow and Killing Frenzy, and was one of the few people who used heavy armor. Then we have Fury, with the company for over 300 days, took part in 92 battles and has 164 kills. Ended up using the Reproach of the Old Gods, could have also used fencing swords, occasionally used just a polearm, so he was pretty good, not one of my favorites, but semi-effective in what he was doing. Based around initiative and nimble, had freedom of movement, well, has freedom of movement, but did not get resilient, so he was semi at risk of dying occasionally. But yeah, he was pretty good. Then we have Enhard, who was originally a brawler, with the company for nearly 500 days, took part in 244 battles and has over 350 kills. One of my most useful mercenaries, reached 100 melee skill and a very nice amount of melee defense, with also a very nice amount of hit points and initiative in the end. Had a resilient and freedom of movement, so was very sturdy indeed. Also had quick step, which I like quite a bit. But yeah, maces, definitely a very nice weapon to have, both for damage and utility, and Enhard, even without Berserk, wielded this golden dag like a god. Next up we have Jon, the Swordmaster, who uses cleavers, especially this one-handed orc cleaver, which we also runed with the bleeding rune. Also used this very nice reach cleaver, and in the end also this pretty good, well, it's a good whip. Used this whip as well. Dealt a lot of damage, had mind over body to help with fatigue costs. Did not have battle flow or killing frenzy sadly, but was very effective despite of that. Next up we have Kraka, who I decided to make a hammer user. with the company for only 140 days, took part in 42 battles and has 36 kills, so was not with us for long, but was quite good. Definitely has a nice selection of perks, as all Oath Takers and Edge Knights etc. seem to get. Uses Berserk with Battle Flow and Killing Frenzy to keep going. Sadly did not have Quick Hands though, but yeah, a pretty good mercenary. Then we have one of the staples of the team, Asa the Cultist, the Flail user. Used this quite nice famed Skullcracker for the majority of the run. With the company for over 600 days, took part in 300 plus battles and has nearly 600 kills, so was quite effective. Used Quick Step and Quick Hands to be even more effective, and also Vengeance. So yeah, one of my favorites. Then we have Hubert, who is quite similar to Enhard. Is a former brawler, but I decided to go lithe instead of nimble for him. Mostly to make use out of In the Zone. I think nimble might have been the better choice in hindsight, but oh well. Also used a Golden Dag, a very similar Golden Dag to Enhard's. Used it very effectively. With the company for 453 days, took part in 221 battles and has 405 kills. One of my favorites. Next up, my absolute favorite of the run, Sami the Fencer, the Dervish. With the company for 565 days, took part in over 300 battles and has a staggering 1200 kills. Used fencing swords extremely effectively, has a very nice amount of initiative. Did not start out with stars in melee skill, but by level 28 ended up with 103 in melee skill. Has 164 hit points, a good amount of melee defense. Has freedom of movement, of course. Did not get Killing Frenzy or Battle Flow or Perfect Focus, but even without those perks was able to deal like a ton of damage with the help of Mind Over Body and Perfect Fit. Next up we have Frirak, with the company for nearly 300 days, took part in 55 battles and has 70 kills. He's another one of these high initiative one-handed sword users. Used a fencing sword relatively effectively, but of course nothing in comparison to Sami. So he was pretty good, but not all that memorable. Then we have Asker, the hammer user, who did not get Berserk, but was quite effective, both with a two-handed hammer and a reach hammer, with Quick Hands. Sadly did not get Quick Step. With the company for 361 days, took part in 162 battles and has 215 kills. A pretty nice mercenary. Then we have Serhilda, the former Ratcatcher and the current Netmaster. Used maces for further utility. Sadly never got bags and belts. We might have been able to get that from Adaptive, but oh well, was still quite useful. With the company for over 500 days, took part in 200 battles, has only 131 kills. Pretty useful character. Was also able to survive with this low amount of hit points without Resilient, mostly due to freedom of movement. So yeah, pretty useful mercenary, but could have been a lot better. And then we have Halver, with the company for nearly 600 days, took part in 300 plus battles, and actually has a decent amount of kills for a Bannerman. That's because we were desperate enough to use him for melee skills early on. He didn't get Fortified Mind, which is kind of insane, and we never found a better Bannerman, so Halver, the mediocre Bannerman, was it for the whole run. Reached only 147 resolve, but hey, it was enough, so thank you for your service. Next up we have Barrand, the Mind Over Body polearm user, with the company for 140 days, so not that long. Took part in 53 battles, but has a pretty nice kill ratio, has 89 kills. So he's our only guy who managed to make use of Perfect Focus with Mind Over Body. He could have been, in theory, even better had he gotten Battle Flow, but oh well. He was quite useful, was able to keep swinging this, well, let's say mediocre polearm, which we used for the -3 fatigue cost reduction, was able to keep swinging that weapon for quite a bit of time before being fatigued out. We might have gotten a recover at some point, but he only reached level 15, so we never got that far. Next up, we have Herman, the former thief who made use of 3 kinds of swords with quick hands. Next up, we have Brangwine, who is only level 8, took part in 0 battles, is a shield maiden, had decent potential as a damage dealer or as a tank, but yeah, let's not discuss her any longer. Then we have Sverre, who was actually quite useful early game, is a former peddler, used staves, with only 57 melee skill though, so we kind of needed backstabber at some point, but we stopped using him, so we never got it. With the company for nearly 700 days, took part in 101 battles and has 46 kills. Quite a good tank and provided a lot of utility in the reserve, both by carrying stuff and from the peddler perks. Next up, we have Egelina, the housemaid, who was an extremely useful reserve character, was able to carry stuff, was able to be our cook, and also, as a housemaid, gets all the paymaster, well, the peddler perks. So extremely useful, always get a housemaid or servant. They are very nice to have. And here's our final human member of the team, Dag, who actually was not used in more than 1 battle with the company for 373 days. He's an inventor, so made some prosthetics, was able to interpret some ancient scrolls as well. We could have gotten a scholar for more loot after battles, but we were swimming in loot anyway, and since we never used the guy in battle, we never got that perk. Was able to do quite a bit of useful things from the reserves. And finally, we have 2 donkeys, mostly just to carry shit around. Not much to say about them. You can use donkeys in battle, but I never wanted to, and also because of our Hate for Beasts limitation, they never got the chance. Now let's have a moment of silence for the fallen. Here is the obituary. The majority of the casualties came in the very beginning, which is to be expected in every run. But as I already said, we did suffer some late game losses as well. Mind you, I think most of them could have been prevented with better play and planning, but I am only human after all. So we lost all of our starting characters pretty early on and had a ton of casualties up until about this point in the run, where I got Rorgon, the Spear Gorgon, killed on purpose. And after that, all of the deaths that came were mostly my own fault, my own incompetence, sloppy play. So rest in peace, Akbar, Emmerich, Bava, the Wolf, who was one of my favorites for a long time, Baldwin, Ragna, Volram, Malabodes, Fulk, Pamin, and the rest of you guys. So what did we not have at the end besides the Vala? Well, we didn't have a ranged character after Pamin died. Bava also died earlier, was killed by Baldwin, who died very soon after, in a different fight though. In the end, it did not seem to matter all that much that we had so few ranged characters, even though this run, I think, kind of, without our limitation at least, kind of favors going for some ranged characters. Oh well, melee characters are stronger in the end and also more durable, so whatever. Number 4, the goals. The Ijirok, legendary locations, legendary beasts. 4.1, the Ijirok. Our original ultimate goal, which was pretty easy overall by the time we did it, I was under the impression that Legends had given it Nimble, but that was not the case. We could have done it far sooner than we did. Oh well. 4.2, the Witch Hut, which was semi-difficult and did get one of us killed, but that was mainly due to just bad play. A good fight with a variety of opponents, and I enjoyed it. 4.3, the Kraken, which I had never done before, not even in vanilla, was ultimately quite easy, made easier by the fact that we could field more than 12 mercenaries, unlike in vanilla. And now for the legendary beast contracts. I will very quickly give my thoughts on them here, but you can of course just check out the fights on the episodes for more. 4.4, legendary beasts. Stallworms. Relatively easy to unlock, but a relatively difficult contract. Lost no one against them though, as far as I can remember at least, and it always spawned 2 stallworms, or that seemed to be the case. Taunt works quite well here, as does just plain old kill them before they can kill you strat. Rock unholds required a bit of grinding, semi-difficult. Use tanks to keep some of them occupied while focusing on the rest. Hardwood scruts required a bit of grinding, difficult. Requires the most planning in order to be able to break shields. Tanks will help a lot here. White wolves required a lot of grinding, easy by the time it was doable. Stuns and nets will make the fight very easy, but they're not even necessary. Redback spiders required a lot of grinding, easy by the time it was doable. Once again, stuns and nets will work well, just try not to get poisoned, at least without resilient. Witch Coven did not need a ton of kills to unlock the contract, but it was a bit tricky to get the kills on the right person. The contract itself was easy, but that's partly because I did it so late in the game. Skin ghouls required a ton of grinding, relatively difficult contract. Stuns and nets will help a lot here as well. We did get Fulk killed against them, but that was just bad play on my part. And finally, Demon Alps required a lot of grinding, and it was also quite a difficult contract. Demon Alps were changed relatively recently, so it makes sense. So we did manage to win the fight without casualties, but it did come pretty close. We almost did lose Borkild, for example. And you can stun the Demon Alps, but actually getting to them can be tricky. Overall, I really like the enemy design for the added enemies and legends. I just think that the contracts themselves need a little bit of fine-tuning in regards to the difficulty. Most of them probably should be a bit tougher, which can be achieved, I think, relatively easily by just adding more enemies to the fights. But yeah, they're very well designed enemies. Number 5. Final words and the future. So that is it for the Beastie Boyos. It did take many hours to accomplish everything, but ultimately we prevailed. For the future, I am not sure if or when I will start another run of Battle Brothers, but I might do it with SSU, which is the Sellswords updated mod, which should, as far as I can tell, make the game more difficult. I was going to do a PTR run at some point, but PTR's development has been discontinued. So for the future run I might be using SSU, but I'm still undecided on the details. The base Legends mod might be updated enough by the time I get around to doing another run that it will feel fresh, even without something like SSU spicing things up. So that's it. I think I've covered just about everything, briefly at least. So thank you for watching, hopefully you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.